is MySQL? Many people have this question and many people get confused. Is SQL and MySQL the same? Or SQL is one of the language or MySQL is one of the language? No. SQL is a communicating language which will help me to communicate with the relational databases. But MySQL is a software which will allow me to keep or to handle a relational database. Now, one is a communicating language and the other is an RDBMS. That's a software which will help me to maintain the database within it. So both the things are totally different from each other. And I've seen in many interviews, candidate gets confused that MySQL and SQL is same. Just by the name, it doesn't mean that these are the two different language. One is a language and another is the software. You have to keep this thing in mind. Now, why we are using MySQL over here? MySQL, the first thing that it's open source and easy to use, that I can easily use it. I can easily handle my data. Second thing is it's storing the data in a relational manner. So if I want to handle data relationally and effectively, I can take help of something called as MySQL. Third thing, it gives me a easy and flexible user interface. So it's easy to handle the database. It's easy for a user to communicate with the database. And the fourth thing, it gives me a client server architecture. Now, what is the meaning of client server architecture? Now, client being me, I'm writing a query. Now, server is where my database is stored. If I'm writing a query, there is a request. And if the request is good enough, I will get the data from the server. That's nothing but a response. If I want to show with an example, you can see over here that MySQL supports a client-server architecture. So this thing which you can see over here is nothing but a client. That's my RDBMS, where it will help me or it will ask me to write the statements or it will ask me to write the instructions. When I'm writing those instructions, it will go as a request. Why? Because if I'm writing a SQL statement, so it will go as a request. Now, why request? Because you know that we are writing what? Queries over here. So queries are nothing but request or ask for the data from the database. So when I share it as a request, you can see that I'm requesting. I'm requesting where? This is what? This is known as a server, where my data is stored. So when I write code over here in my RDBMS, it will go as a request into my server where it will ask me for some information. When it is asking me for some information, if the information is found, it will provide me response. If the information is not found, it will also provide me response. It could be one that if the information is found, if the data is found, it will give me the data or the information. Second, if the data is not found, it will throw me the response again, but that would be an error. So MySQL supports which architecture for me? A client-server architecture. So as you can see over here, this is what? This is my client where I'm writing an instruction. That's my RDBMS. That's my user interface, which will take my statements. And this is what? This is my server where the data is stored and from where the information is being captured. So we have something called as client-server architecture, which is being supported in MySQL, and it becomes very easy to handle the data. So that's the reason why we are going to understand something called as SQL with a platform known as MySQL, which is nothing but an RDBMS. So I hope we are able to understand the terminologies over here. That is, what is data? What is database? What are the different types of data? What is a DBMS? What is an RDBMS? And what is SQL? And why we are using SQL in the study of data science. Now, proceeding further, we will be seeing how to install MySQL. Then with that, we'll able to understand some basic queries, some basic instructions which we would like to give in order to access the data. And eventually we'll understand how different ways of accessing the data could be taken into consideration. So I hope we are able to understand till here.